Right, I'm conscious of the time here. Is Darren back?
Yes, Chair, we're all here at the moment.
Right, so is there anybody we're expecting who's not here as yet?
I think we've got all that we're expecting, Chair.
Right, okay, in which case we'll make a start. So good afternoon, thank you for attending the special virtual meeting of the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel to consider the Hurst Grange Park Coach House Lottery project. For those who don't know me, I'm Councillor David Howarth and I'm the chair of the panel. Please note that this is an audio and video meeting. It's being recorded and the stream is also live on YouTube. The web address for this is displayed on the council's website. Members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. The cabinet member and officers will present the report and I will then invite panel members to ask any questions. If any committee members wish to speak, you should unmute your microphone and say your name or use the raise your hand feature and I'll then invite you in order. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for several minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. But thankfully, we've not had any problems to date. So please can I ask all members to confirm they can see, hear and speak before the meeting begins, and I'll call out each member alphabetically. So Councillor Will Adams.
Loud and clear, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Coulton. Councillor Colin Coulton, could you confirm that you can hear and speak? Right, we appear to have lost Councillor Coulton. Councillor...
No, I'm okay. Sorry.
All right, you are with us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Sharples.
Loud and clear, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Karen Walton.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. The officers this afternoon are Darren Cranshaw, who is our Assistant Director of Scrutiny and Democratic Services, and Charlotte Lynch, who is our Democratic and Member Services Officer, who is minuting the meeting. Our guests this afternoon are Councillor Mick Titherington, who's the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Leisure, Jennifer Mullin, the Director of Neighbourhoods and Development, Neil Anderson, the Assistant Director of Projects, Andrew Richardson, the Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods, and Greg Clark, the Landscape Officer. And we also have in attendance Councillor Ange Turner and Councillor Harry Hancock, who are the Broad Oak Ward members in which the Hurst Grange Coach House is located. So, first of all, could I ask for apologies for absence? I believe we're all here, so we don't have any. In which case, the next item is, do we have any declarations of interest? If not, then if we can move on to the main item on the agenda, which is the Coach House Lottery project, and if I could ask the Cabinet Member, Councillor Mick Titherington, and the Director, Jennifer Mullin, to present their report.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we will like to do in the first instance is just to show a fly-through of the plan that we've got for the Hurst Grange Coach House, and then what I'll do is I'll do a short introduction and then we can go to questions and answers. So in the first instance, if we can just show this presentation about the design of the coach house.
Sorry, Councillor Tillings, can I just please stop you there? Can I stop you there, please? We've had no prior notification of any presentation of a video or presentation of the building itself, and I'm not sure that's why we're here. I'm quite sure that the architectural designs and the way the building looks are absolutely wonderful, but we're here about scrutiny, governance and fiduciary process as to how we've arrived at the figures that are being quoted and what we're being asked at the full council to approve. So I'm not sure it's appropriate to be given an all singing, all dancing presentation on how good the building is. I don't think any of us doubt that. The questions we'd like to ask is how we got to where we are in terms of the finance and the decision making.
Okay, if that's what you want. I mean, I just thought it might be opportune for us to have a look at what we are actually talking about. But if you want us to proceed, so as I said, I mean, the committee has had a comprehensive report on the history, on the tender, and all the background to why we're here today. But I mean, I just want to say in the first instance is that there is a long history to this. It does date back to 2005. It has received all party support during that time, and the community support. And I think, personally, I think it's an exciting project. I think it is, with the design that we haven't seen, but people will see it. I think it will show a historic characteristics on the outside and a modern classical inside. So I'm sure that it's going to be a building that will bring a number of visitors to the site. I think the community will use it. I think it will enhance the park, and I think it is a real exciting project. So, I mean, as you said, I mean, I suppose the reasons why we are here is why there has been an escalation in the costs. And I think that in the report, and I would refer to the report, there are a number of explanations why that is. And I would just point out that, yes, the £250,525 is a significant amount, but so is the 513,000 odd that we are receiving from the lottery. And I do want to commend the officers for the work that they have done in being able to get that bid from the lottery, because the Heritage Lottery Fund do not give out grants like confetti. It's a very, very difficult thing to get money. It's a difficult fund to get money out of, and so I think that they should be commended for the work that they have done in being able to obtain that. I understand that we are only one we are one of only two bids that were successful in the Northwest. So, I mean, I think if you look at it on balance, I think with the attributes and all that, with the attributes that the building brings, is that what it will look like. I mean, the benefits to the community, the benefits to the park. I think it's what we are now left with is a considerable asset as far as the borough is concerned. Now, if we just turn to the sort of the escalation of costs, I mean, that you are concerned with, I think there has been significant reports that and consultation that has taken place over a long period of time. I think if you look at the up until February 19 and June 2019, that's the budget report of 2019, and the June cabinet report that was submitted in June 2019, which does earmark 30,000 for 1920, and then 120,000 match funding for 2021. I think then if you, there is an explanation there within the report of why the monies have increased, and you will see on the 16th of October 2019, the quantity surveyor updated the cost estimate for building works completed following the project development phase, and that took the current cost up to 783,625. Following that, there was a meeting of local members that was conducted through the My Neighbourhood Forum, and that was on the 30th of October, where the project progress was reported and the revised costs were put there. I think the invite, unfortunately, I think there was only one member who did attend that meeting, but they were there. The opportunity was there. And then if you come to the 26th of February budget meeting, where you will see that the monies there were included in the capital programme, where for the first time it did talk about the 780,000 plus, but I would have to concede is that, well, it talked about the 780,000 plus, were subject to the spend, subject to a successful lottery bid. Now, I would concede is that throughout that, following where the jump went from the contributory cost or the match funding for South Ribble, where it jumped from 150,000 to 253,100 £, is that could have been identified, reported, and consulted on a bit more, and brought before Cabinet to decide prior to us going in for the bid. So there are lessons to be learned there, but I again come back to on balance. I think for what we are getting, and I suppose it's a bit like the half full or half empty, but what we're getting here is in my view, a fantastic project at a third of the price. So I will leave it there, and obviously we'll leave it for open for questions. I just don't know if the director or if I can or Greg wants to come in and say anything at this stage.
Do we have anybody who wishes to add to that?
Okay, sorry.
I'm just asking if we have anybody who wishes to add to your opening presentation.
I think they've indicated we'll move to questions.
Right, okay. In which case, if I could invite Councillor Colin Sharples with the first question.
Yes, question for the Cabinet member. When were you first made aware of this project? Have you been involved in any decision relating to the project to date?
I think if you talk about being involved in the project, yeah, I think we've all been involved in the project in some way or other. Prior to May last year, I have visited the park. I have met with the friends of the park. I was aware that we are gearing up for a lottery bid. I think in the June Cabinet meeting, it was approved that there would be an additional spend of the 150,000 over a 2-year period. And we, of course, when it went to council, when the 783,000 subject to the lottery, a successful lottery bid, then council approved that. So I think I have to say that whether it was, me not being vigilant enough or the members not being vigilant enough, I don't think we realised that the increase had gone from 150,000 to 253,000, quite as much when it was presented to council. And I think, I've already conceded that. I do think that it's been a sort of a deficiency in terms of the, of the full impact of the bid. I would concede also that probably before presenting the bid, we should have been advised that there was a considerable increase in our contributory funding for that. I suppose in mitigation, I mean, there was a very short window to get it in, and the officers were working hard to make sure that the bid was prepared in such a way that we would be successful in getting it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I bring in Councillor Mrs. Karen Walton?
Hello, Mick.
Hiya.
Good
Hiya,
afternoon.
Karen.
My question it concerns that the project has become a significant in financial value and complexity. As you've explained, it's gone up from £120,000 now to the council of £253,525 now being part of the council's funding for it. Why wasn't it not included in the council's corporate plan? I know you said it's part of the capital programme. And how will the project be monitored if it isn't a corporate plan project?
Well, I think in terms of the corporate plan, I mean, you know, the corporate plan sets out that our vision to enhance the parks and the green links, of course. I mean, so I think it does fall within the corporate plan and what we're wanting to do in terms of making our parks more attractive and visitor friendly. And I think that sort of vision has had all parties to support. And I must say, I mean, throughout all of this, I don't think there is anybody, any elected member, anybody, or indeed from the community, who've raised any objections for the actual sort of what we were trying to achieve here in restoring the coach house. So I think there has been, a groundswell of support for what we are trying to achieve. And so, I mean, I don't think we've been compromised in terms of the corporate plan. I think it's well within there. I think what we should have done, or what should have happened, is that the increase in the cost in our contribution should have been more clearly identified. Members should have been aware of that additional cost before we were actually committed to it. I mean, and I think that's why now, because we're in scrutiny, that's why we're going to council to make the final decision.
Okay. So how will the project be monitored? The financial.
Well, within the bid and the 783,000, there is a contingency portion of that. I mean, I think it's about 73,000. I mean, and we would hope. I mean, one doesn't know really about what the effects of post-COVID is going to be, but we would hope that the tender would, though the successful tender would come in less than the 253,000. But we have to be confident that we don't exceed the 253,000 costs. I mean, I do share members' concerns about that. I mean, having gone up to 253,000, I mean, we can't afford for it to go in excess of that.
Yes.
So yeah, it will be
monitored.
Yeah.
Yes, and will it be brought back to scrutiny if the costs appear to be escalating?
I can categorically assure you of that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, mate.
I think Councillor Colton, do you wish to come in?
Yeah. Mick, hello, Mick.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there should have been more transparency about the increase. So, but why wasn't there more transparency?
Well, I don't think it was a deliberate thing. I mean, I think if you look at the programme, and the dates. I mean, it was reported. I mean, as I say, I mean, the increase in costs have been reported, but not necessarily identified. I think in the budget, when it went to the budget meeting on the 26th of February, I mean, it was included in there that it was up to 783,000. And I mean, if you could have worked it out, I suppose, is that as the funding from the Heritage Lottery was going to be 513,000, that the contribution had gone up. I mean, as I keep saying, I mean, it should have been identified that it had gone up. But I think the reasons why is that the officers were so sort of wrapped up in ensuring that the bid was prepared and that we were successful in any bid.
Is there any way we can ensure that this doesn't happen again for future projects?
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I've tried to be as honest as I can with it. I mean, and I think that, like, I hate the phrase, but it is appropriate on this occasion, is that, yeah, lessons will be learned.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I could come in with a question. The first recommendation in the report welcomes the award of the lottery funding. Has the council now formally accepted the funding, and who made if it has, who made the decision and when was it made? Because I don't think we're really clear as to whether we've accepted the funding and what the stage of the funding now is.
No, I mean, we haven't accepted the funding. I mean, we will only accept the funding when it's gone through. I mean, you will see now that it's going to council. I mean, in ordinary circumstances, I suppose it would have gone to the 18th of March cabinet meeting, where we would have discussed, our contribution to that, having received confirmation that we've received the bid. But this will now go to council. It will be debated at council, and only when council approves it will we then sort of be in a position to accept the monies from the Heritage Lottery Fund. That's true, isn't it?
If I can come back in actual fact, it should have gone to Cabinet before the Stage 2 bid was actually submitted, because that's what was agreed at the Cabinet meeting in July 2018. But anyway, if I could come back with another question. There's some confusion as well as to, is this award up to 515,000, i.e. can we take less? Do we have to accept it all, or can the project be scaled back to something that is more financially, I'm going to say realistic?
No, I don't think we can. I mean, and to be perfectly frank, personally, I don't think that would be advisable. I mean, what we would be doing is that we, the officers have worked, really hard to present the bid. I mean, and in the current circumstances, I mean, it is a tremendous figure to achieve. And personally, I mean, I would hope that we would utilise that to the full. But having presented the bid, having been successful in that bid, I think it would be, if you like, embarrassing. And I don't know what the lottery fund people would think about that if we said, well, okay, we're scaling it back. And personally, I think it would be a retrograde step if we did scale it back. But I'll ask Greg Clark to come in and sort of explain that in a bit more detail.
Good afternoon, councillors. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So the award of 513,000 from the lottery is the amount that the bid has requested towards the overall project costs. Our current funding element would be the 250,000. That assumes that a grant request to the Lancashire Environmental Fund is not successful. Obviously, we won't know that until later in the year, so we have put an amount in to underwrite that grant. Obviously, if it is successful, our much funding can be reduced by 30,000. The tender process that was gone through previously, obviously the bid that was identified at that stage was 60,000 below pre-tender estimates, and we also have an amount of around 70,000 in the costs of contingency, which obviously would only be spent if required. So our elements of match funding will be reduced with those elements if the bid is successful. Obviously, if a tender price through the next tender process is received that's below pre-tender estimate, and obviously if contingencies are not needed to be spent.
Okay. Perhaps if I can bring in Councillor Will Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Just 2 points. What is the relationship between the council and the Friends of Hurst Grange Park, first of all? And also, what is the Friends Group's role within the lottery bid and project? I know it's quite historic, so.
Well, in terms of the relationship with the Friends of the Park, I mean, I suppose it's a relationship that we have with a number of community groups. I mean, you know, as a council, we act as sort of enablers and support, and we engage with a number of community groups to ensure that, you know, what they're trying to do, I mean, if it's making a contribution to the community, is that they can do it well. I mean, you know, I mean, I don't think it's any different than with other community groups. I mean, I think the Friends of the Park, as you can see from the report, have been engaged for some time in funding or raising funds to assist in the bid for lottery funding. So that were there. Going forward, I think the relationship will be, I mean, the council will manage the coach house. We will, you know, promote it for community use, and make it as attractive as possible for visitors. And I think the Friends group will be just one of those groups that may wish to use it or hire it. I think that it will be a small portion, a small part for them to store material, you know, some materials. But other than that, you know, they will be the same as, you know, a host of other community groups and friends.
Okay. If I could come back in then, I mean, I have asked a number of questions down the years to full council regarding the progress of the project for the coach house, and have been supported of it. But a question I asked back in January 2016 to the then Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources about how the progress was going, the reply I received was that the council did not simply have a blank cheque. And likewise, myself and Councillor Hancock, during the consultation phase, when the consultants were appointed in the £15,000 resilient grant, we met with Bill Taylor from the consultants, and we were then sent a 2-page précis of the conversation we'd had with the minutes, and what we were told then was that it should have a sound business plan with income, and at least meeting the running costs was key. This has turned out not to be the case, so why is that? And what's the difference between this project and others such as Worden Hall, which is required to at least break even?
Greg, do you want? On the revenue side?
From the revenue point of view, obviously we've put together estimates on the income that we believe the coach house operation could bring in. Those estimates are obviously conservative. We've looked at an element of room hire and potential income from charity or social enterprise, hiring some space on the first floor and potentially some sort of catering outlet element. If these are successful, they should draw in more funding, but at this stage we've sort of made conservative estimates to demonstrate to the lottery that we would generally caretake and manage the building as part of the wider portfolio of buildings through the existing facilities, services, and obviously that would be offset with more volunteer input and potentially more income. But we've set the baseline relatively low, so we're not having to run the building to make profits that may not be realised, depending what operations are put in place.
I don't think that really explains why it doesn't have to break even, but we seem to be putting a commitment in there, which the consultant certainly didn't recommend. But anyway, if we move on, I have another question. Given the amount of exposure that we now have, what financial constraints and limits were actually set on the project, if any, and who approved them? Was there a maximum exposure set out? And why have the cost implications for the council risen by over 1,000% since July 2018?
Do you want to say?
The initial figure that went into the 2018 report was based on the match funding at a level of 5%, which is publicised as the minimum match funding required by the lottery for a bid. And that was 5% of the expected build cost based on the resilient grant work that took place at that time. So that was the amount went into the original report. Obviously, since then, we were given permission to go through to the full heritage grant bid, at which time, obviously, we were allocated a grant officer who can provide more detailed information. We were told, obviously, at that stage, a 5% match fund amount wouldn't be sufficient, and to make the bid competitive against all the other causes that would be bidding, that amount would have to be increased with match funding provided from other sources. Obviously, South Ribble Borough Council, the Friends of Hurst Grange, and potential other funds. Obviously, moving forward during the development phase, we worked up the stage 1 bid with the match fund at 120,000. That amount was obviously offset against the wider project cost. The lottery were asked for the obviously bid amount of 513,000. As the development phase moved on, obviously the details were worked up, and obviously at the end of that, the quantity surveyor went away, reworked the plans, and with the additional contingencies and extra works, obviously, that are outlined in the report, that raised the amount up to the final project cost of the 790 odd thousand. So the lottery make it clear that you cannot increase the ask from them between round 1 and round 2, and so obviously the council has included extra in the contribution on our side to underwrite that amount. As I say, that is based on pre-tender estimates and various provisional sums and contingencies. So that's the estimated amount, not the final spend. That would be the upper limit. So in answer to the question about the upper limit, that would be the 250,000 from the council. We would expect it to be in the region of perhaps 50 to 80,000 less than that, depending how the tender prices come back at the next tender process.
Right, okay, I appreciate all of that. I've clearly read the report and had all the rationale, but I don't think you're really answering the question. When this project started, was there an amount you were told you could go up to? Clearly, there was an approval in July 2018 at the Cabinet for a 460,000 project with a 5% contribution from the council. I appreciate that the Heritage Lottery Fund after that said that 5% was not enough, but there was never any mention in that Cabinet report of this being a minimum. It was 5% for the council. So who has been approving all of these increases in the commitments for the council. And you say that the council, you refer to the council is its elected members, and the elected members are responsible for the decision taking. So who has been approving all of this constant increased expenditure? Because there hasn't been any report on the Hurst Grange coach house submitted to any committee of this council since July 2018.
Well, if you look at the report, I think in July 2018, the match funding level was at least 20%, and then it went to, in February 19, the budget report submitted and approval by council containing £50,000 allocated to Hurst Grange, and then in the cabinet report in June 2019, submitted approved for the Green Links Capital Programme funding, including Hurst Grange Coach House, which earmarked for 30,000 in 1920 and 120,000 match funding in 2021. So I think that has been approved. And as I said, I mean, and, you know, I've said all along, I mean, I think then there is a gap until it goes to the 26th of February budget report, where it does in that report contain, you know, a 789,000 spend on the coach house, subject to lottery funding. But I mean, you know, we have to recognise is that I don't think it has been made clear in that period that it would be that it'd gone up to 253,000 contribution from the council, and I think that's where there is a gap. I mean, I think that the reports have been there. I mean, and of course, I mean, the report went to members in October, or you know, there was a consultation opportunity there. So I think that there has been reports going forward, but I do accept that it might not have been readily identifiable that the increase in the council contributions was creeping up.
Right. Okay. Can I bring Councillor Colin Sharples in, please?
Thank you, Chair. What governance and scrutiny procedures were put in place to oversee the project and ensure financial fiduciary?
Well, I mean, again, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sort of repeating myself, but the sort of the program and the history of it all is laid out there. I mean, I suppose, I mean, the cabinet reports went there. I mean, I think, as I say, from October until the February, there was that gap. I mean, I suppose if you're talking about scrutiny and all that, I mean, it's now been identified, and you know that's why we're here. I mean, other than within the report, and where it's been identified, where there have been reports that have gone to the various, you know, to council committees or to cabinet, then, as I say, I mean, it's not easily identifiable is that the increased contribution is there, but it is there. It has been reported.
Okay. I think mine's the next question as well, isn't it, Chair?
No, I think it's Councillor Coulson.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
You mentioned some gaps in information, giving information out. But can you tell us, you know, exactly how members have been kept abreast of the project, particularly the ward members, and also has the Penwith and My Neighbourhood Forum been involved in the project?
Well, I mean, if you look at the history, I mean, the building is on the Penwitham list, and the town council have supported the bid. I mean, I'm not talking about the actual contribution, but they have been supportive of the applications to lottery fund going forward. And if you look in the report on the 30th of October 2019, there was a meeting arranged through the My Neighbourhoods for local members to be updated on the progress, showing the revised costs and to answer questions. And that did go out. Well, that did go through the My Neighbourhoods forum.
Okay.
So can I just come back in there, because that wasn't the question. The question was, could you talk us through how, in particular, the ward members were briefed and engaged? And maybe Councillor Hancock or Councillor Turner might want to come in here and explain to us what briefing, if any, they actually had.
Well, Greg, can you enlighten us?
From my point of view, the regular progress updates were provided to the My Neighbourhood officers for the meeting with the local members that she held on a regular basis, and that information was fed through. And obviously, any questions that were raised were sort of returned to me for answers. And obviously that's what led to the meeting towards the end of the development phase on the 30th of October, for obviously questions to be answered at the sort of the end of that period of time.
Right. We keep getting reference to this meeting on the 30th of October. I mean, I'm not aware who it was who actually arranged it, but the local members were actually undergoing compulsory safeguarding training on that evening. So clearly nobody checked the diary to see if local members would actually be available, which is maybe why only Councillor Shaw actually attended it.
Well, if that is the case, if that was the case, I suppose that's really unfortunate. I would have thought if representations would have been made, and I don't know if they were, but if representations had been made that there was a clash of meetings, then I'm sure that one of those meetings could have been rearranged. I would have hoped that would be the case if representations were made to say, look, we're double booked, it's not appropriate or we haven't got the ability for local members to attend. Then I would have expected for meetings of that nature to be rearranged. And I'd be surprised if that hasn't happened, frankly.
I mean, again, if I can just come back, it does seem quite evident here that no effort has ever been made to sit down with the two ward members, that the coach house is in their ward, and take them through any briefing or any update on what was actually happening. It's all been done third party through somebody at a neighbourhood forum that, well, if you turn up, you might be able to find out. It's extremely poor, but I'll let the two ward members come in on that at some stage. Maybe we can move on to Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just ask, what engagement has there been with Pembrokeshire Town Council as a member of that council? It doesn't seem to have been much engagement as a new councillor, certainly in the since May of last year.
Well, I mean, speaking personally, I mean, I don't think I've been engaged in any discussions with the local members specifically on the coach house, and I would sort of have to concede, really. I mean, is that because the history on this project is so long, I felt that it's probably been, bubbling along. I mean, and maybe I should have sort of taken a lot more interest and ensured that there was more consultation with local members. And I think, you know, the lesson to be learned is that, you know, there should have been more consultation with the cabinet as well. I can't answer really what consultations, you know, specific consultations in relation to the coach house have taken place. I think it's whatever consultation or reports that have been made in relation to the progress are contained within the history that's within the report. Other than that, I'm not aware of any you know, specific meetings that were arranged with the town council to discuss the coach house. I mean, I'm not saying it's right, but I suppose because there hasn't been any sort of objections raised, is that the support that has been expressed over a period of years was still in place. But I mean, you know, I'd have to concede that's a sort of, if there hasn't been any consultation, it probably you know, something that should have happened.
Yeah, I think. Can I come back in, Chair? Yeah, I think because it is such a historic project, and it's obviously been on the cards for many years before I was on the council, and a member of both South Ribble Borough and Pemberton Town Council. It just seems, certainly before I came on the council, that it's kind of been, as you say, bubbling along, but it kind of feels like there's been quite a few steps that should have been taken historically, which is why we are now in this position at this moment. I think certainly from a new member's point of view, coming into this, both as a representative on each of the councils, it just seems that we've missed things historically, which is why we are now here. And I think that's just the thing we're trying to get on top with today.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, as I say, there hasn't been specific consultations that have taken place that perhaps should have done with the ward members and with the town council. I think the reports have been at a level of, you know, cabinet reports and council reports, and you know, I keep saying is that I think it is there. I mean, the amount of money that was going to be spent is there and is in the reports that have gone to cabinet and have gone to council, but they haven't been specifically identified, and they should have been. And I mean, there should have been discussions with the town council and with the ward members. I'll just bring Greg in to sort of, you know, supplement that.
As part of the development phase, the consultants who put the activity plan together, which is a document needed as part of the lottery bid, an activity planning workshop was held with stakeholders, and an invite was sent to the town council, and the town manager attended that workshop on behalf of the town council, obviously to put the input of the town council generally into that side of the project, activities that could be held, potential uses for the building moving forward. So from that point of view, obviously the town council were brought in at that stage. Absolutely, there's full support from the town council, obviously, because the future use of the building is obviously the operation of the town council just as much as the borough council.
Right, okay, maybe we should move on. Councillor Mrs. Walton.
Yes, I've got a question. It's can you explain what evidence base has been used to prepare the present lottery bill that we've been going on? I know it's been going on for a long time, but waiting for an opportunity to put in a lottery bid. As the project has been going back since 2005, have the changes to South Ribble and specifically Pemberton over the years been taken into account? For example, the town council has similar venues to the coach house. that are being run by the town council.
I'm sorry, Karen. I mean, you did break up a little bit there. I mean, are we talking about the future management of it?
No. We're talking about the changes that have taken place in Penwith since 2005, and has the lottery bid taken into account of this, as Penwith now has 3 other very similar venues?
Well, I thought. Well, the lottery bid was, was presented in October or November.
Yes.
And you can see from the bid is that, I mean, obviously within the bid it emphasises what it will mean to the park itself, what it will mean to the community. I mean, there are questions to be asked in terms of the community, and so all the efforts and time and energy has gone into completing the bid that went in, and that was successful. Yeah, I mean, I know that they've got a community centre in Kingsfold, but I think in terms of not standalone, but I mean, you've got to look at it as a project. I mean, and when we talk about it from 2005, I think, as I've said previously, I think there has been a common support for what we're trying to achieve there, and I think that was included in the bid when it went forward. I think things change over a period of time, but in terms of the desire for what we want from the building, I don't think that did change. And I keep coming back. I mean, and I have to say, I do commend the officers' work in getting the bid, notwithstanding what's been said about the consultation and the report. But I mean, I do think it is worth bearing in mind that this is a bid that has been successful, and the Heritage Lottery Fund don't give out bids willy-nilly. You have to jump through hoops to get it. So I mean, they've obviously seen something within there, the way the bid was presented, for them to grant the funding. So
will the town council be taking more of an active role in the when the work's completed and everything? I know they are going to do, but they've got other buildings in now that they're responsible for in the town council.
Well, they have. I mean, and the town council will be offered, to be involved as much as they will be. The borough council will, obviously be responsible for maintaining it. But I mean, yeah, the town council will be fully involved in whatever they would like to see. And I think, learning lessons from the exchanges we've had during the course of this meeting, I think there will be an extra emphasis on ensuring that the ward councillors, the town council, and everybody associated, community groups within Penwith are properly consulted and their views are recognised. So I see the town council playing a very important part, if not an integral part, going forward.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I could come on to Councillor Sharples.
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring now to page 5 of the report, which is the timeline part of the report. July 2018, reference is made to the match funding level increasing by 20%. Who commended and agreed this, and how transparent was this decision?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll bring Greg in to sort of answer that. I don't.
So that was then covered in the Cabinet report of June 2019, which the project was included as part of the wider Green Links project. And that gave permission to spend on our contribution to the funds for the development phase to work up the round 2 bid. And that included in that programme the initial amount of the match funding, the original 120 amount of match funding from the council for the round 2 bid as estimated at that stage.
Well, just moving a bit further on then, September 2018, round 1 bid submitted. What match funding commitment was included in that bid? Was this the 20% recommended in July 2018? Again, who approved it?
I think the round 1 is a different thing, isn't it? Well, I don't. I mean, well, my understanding is, and I'm going to bring Greg in, is that the match funding that was, gone up to 20% from there, and then in September, the round 1, we did receive a, £15,000. Sorry, well, 12,500 grant to from the Resilience Heritage Grant Fund. Although it does say 15,000 here. Just speaking to,
So we have 3 stages effectively with the bid. We have the original resilience grant that was applied for and gained by the Friends Group. That's a grant available only to voluntary groups. And that's designed to put the initial information in place through consultants. And that's when the work with Bill took place at the consultancy. And worked up the round 1 information to submit a round 1 bid. At round 1, we were awarded £12,500 of grant funding, of which we matched 32 to basically develop those details to work up the round 2 bid that was then submitted.
It doesn't sort of answer the question. Who actually approved it? Does it? I mean, it all seems to just to have happened.
So the approval for the spend for the development phase was June 19. That covered the actual spend for the development grant and the council's match funding. Obviously, there's no permission to spend beyond that because no funds have been spent at this time.
Not sure I fully understand that, but just moving on.
Well, I mean, just recognising that. I mean, there are 2 rounds, as you can see from the report. I mean, in September 18, round 1 Heritage Fund submitted by to the Heritage Lottery Fund by the council in partnership with the Friends Group. So then in December, that's when the notification from the HLF that the coach house bid had received a round 1 pass. So you've got to go through the different rounds. So I mean, up until then, that's when we start talking about gearing up for the round 2 bid.
Okay, well, can I just move on to February 2019? This is a question about the increase in the matched funding. The budget contained £50,000, but by June 2019, the match funded had increased to £120,000 for 2021. Who was this reported to and who approved it between February and June? What was the cost of the project at this stage to require £120,000? And where was the approval for increased costs?
Well, I suppose, I mean, the increased cost was approved at the June 2019 Cabinet. Because it says that if you look at the June 2019 Cabinet report submitted and approved for the Green Links Capital Programme funding, including Hayes Grange Coach House, which earmarked 30,000 in 1920 and 120,000 in 2021.
Yeah. What was that cost? Why did it go from that? Why was it 120? What was the cost of the project at that point where it would require 120? Bit I don't understand.
That was Greg.
So the 120 was based on the round one figure, which was in the region of around 150 less than the current budget figure. I haven't got the actual figure in front of me here, but that's based on our contribution for the round one cost, which was 513 from the lottery, a bid from the LEF of 25,000, a contribution of 15,000 from the Friends, and then 120,000 from the council.
Okay, thank you.
I think just to sort of add to that, I mean, I think if you look at the report on paragraph 12 on page 6. And halfway through there, I mean, it does give an explanation, but I don't think if it's the penultimate sentence where it says the lottery also confirmed that a 95% funding split was not likely to be competitive at the assessment and should be revised. And as a result, the round one bid total of 655,700 included 120,000.
Right, thank you, Councillor Titherington, because we don't seem to be getting the answers we're looking for here. I mean, Councillor Sharples, in his first question, asked how transparent this decision was. This approval was in a cabinet report on the complete Green Links project, with a figure included in an appendix, which included every project in the Green Links program, with no explanation, and the 625,000 you just mentioned, no mention of that in that report to the cabinet. But on the back of that, the cabinet has approved this increase to 120,000. We're still not being told who's actually approved it, and there was no reference to the project now costing well over 600,000. It was a figure in an appendix, and that was it. The only mention of the Hurst Grange Coach House in that report to cabinet on the Green Links was that Worden Hall and Hurst Grange Coach House were part of the buildings within the parks. No explanation whatsoever, and the 600,000, no mention of it. So who is approving this?
Well, I mean, I think I've already said is that I think the money has been there. I mean, I think it has been in the report, but I have conceded repeatedly that it's not readily identifiable on there. I mean, I think up until that point is that, you know, the cabinet approved it. I mean, I would readily accept is that, you know, a member or a member of the public reading that would not readily identify that was the type of money that was going to be spent on the coach house. But it is there, and it also, I mean, it is in the council report of the cabinet, the budget report in February 2020. Again, I've recognised that it's not readily identifiable about the money, and I have conceded that there is a gap there. You know, from that June until it went to the budget meeting in February.
Well, can I just say, I find it somewhat disappointing that a figure of 120,000 match funding can be agreed without knowing what it is you're matching, because the figure of the 600,000, there's never any mention of it. Anyway, perhaps we can move on again. On page 5 of the report, June 2019, between June 2019 and October 2019, the cost estimates had almost doubled to 783,625. Why was this the case? Who authorised this increase? on what transparency was there about this decision, because transparency, openness and transparency is a theme that we're trying to get to here. I'm trying to find out if there ever was any.
Well, I mean, yeah, I accept that there is a gap there, and I think I don't know where we can point to in terms of whether or not, or when that was reported. I mean, certainly, if you look at the quantity, 16th of October, when the quantity surveyors updated cost estimate for the building was then for the first time the figure of 783,625. I think you have to accept that should have been brought before Cabinet, should have been made aware of it, and indeed should have been, Council should have been made aware of it before the bid went in.
That probably leads me on to my next question then, because given that there was an increase to almost double the original cost, what authority was there for a stage 2 bid to take place? The Cabinet decision of July 2018 said that the bid would be resubmitted following Cabinet approval. So why was Cabinet approval not sought, and how did we go ahead with a stage 2 bid for £783,625 without anybody's approval or authority? Who approved this? And we keep asking this question, who approved it? We're not getting the answers.
Well, I've tried to be as honest as possible. I repeatedly say, I mean, there does seem to be a major gap there. I don't know if any of the officers can come in and fill in on that. Yeah. Who's the Chief Executive? Acting Chief Executive.
Chair, are you happy for me to comment, because I've been watching the proceedings? Yeah, I think we're diving into lots of detail about who did what and who said what. The reality on this project is, and you made it right at the outset, that where was the transparency? Where was the decision making about the bid? Because it should be made clear in the round 2 that the bid was being increased, and that should have been signed off and made transparent. That hasn't happened. Okay, the points you make about how it's been reported are also correct. That they were, I won't use the word hidden, but they weren't as transparent as they should have been in respect of getting decisions from the council about moving ahead with the project. That's really clear from all the paperwork that exists. I think we just need to say that actually this could have been done much better. The stakeholders have not been engaged as they should have been engaged. That's very clear. There were attempts, but not the best of attempts to do that. The one point I would make is that at this point in time, there is still a decision to be made by the council about whether this project goes ahead or not. Yeah. So yes, we can all learn from what we've done. Had we'd approved this or accepted the lottery bid, we'd be having a completely different discussion. The point to make is that there were lots of things that have not gone right in this project in terms of reporting and approvals. I think we got to just take it on the chin and say we could have done it much better. But there is still a decision to be made, and all the points that you're making about value, who's going to do what in terms of running the facility once it's up and running, the ongoing revenue costs, again, need to be debated more fully, and we're going to get that opportunity at the council.
Thank you. I think if I'm reading between the lines here, this might be somewhat connected to the governance report that we've recently received and the lack of it. But anyway, if we can press on. Councillor Adams. He seems to be doing a sound check.
That's not me, I promise.
No, I think it's here.
Just page 6 of the report, on the date of 14th of November 2019, who authorised submission of the round 2, the full HLF application?
Sorry, Will, I think we've probably moved on from that one. Would you like to ask a question about the presentation to the National Lottery Funding Committee?
I can do. So page 6 again, but this time the 6th of Feb 2019. Who was involved in the presentation to the National Lottery Funding Committee and were elected members involved?
Greg? No, it was no, elected members were not involved in that. It was officers of the council and members of the Friends group.
Okay. Councillor Coulton. Sorry, Councillor Coulton, do you have a question? Could you unmute, please?
Right, sorry. On page 6 of the report, paragraph 12, it mentions income projections. What have these income projections been based on, and what market testing have you done to arrive at these income projections? There is quite a bit of competition. For example, Much Hool are building a new all singing and dancing village hall, which I should imagine will be in direct competition with this venture.
Well, I mean, I think you're referring to paragraph 11, are you? In relation to the projections of the revenue. Well, I think that question's already been answered. Is that as far as the officers are concerned, and the projections are a conservative estimate, conservative with a small c, are a conservative estimate, and they are confident that they will be met. I don't like to sort of think about different community centres or different communities being in competition. I mean, I think they're complementary, and you know they supplement each other. But I mean, in terms of the project revenue model, is that we believe that, you know, we're fairly confident that they will be met.
But part of the question was what market research has actually been done. You know, I don't know.
Okay, all right. Okay. Let's Greg answer.
Refer again to the activity plan that was drawn up by consultants as part of the bid. Obviously, it's a fair point about competing provision, because obviously what we don't want to do is put a facility there that's going to then steal trade from other venues. And obviously we've had, say, development since the original process first started. So obviously the town council has got new venues, things like that. So the activity plan looked at similar provision in the area, obviously potential competing provision, and the offer for the coach house has been based on the things that the park can offer. So the coach house is very much about providing facilities for activities within the park. It'll also obviously draw in potential trade from the wider area of Penwitham, but it's there to work with and complement the other venues rather than try and compete against them. There have been changes since the project started. Obviously, when we first started looking at the project in earnest, we had St Mary's Church Hall across the road. Obviously, that's no longer there. The library has obviously changed its use on Liverpool Road. So the revenue has been looked at as a conservative level, but it's based on the recommendations from the consultant who put together the activity plan with us. And there's a 100-page document, one of which the sections looks at provision in the area and how that can be complemented. The lottery obviously don't want to fund one project that then kills similar projects within the catchment. Obviously, that's counterproductive.
So can I just come in? Have you actually got any interested tenants for these rooms? Because the Borough Council also owns the community centre down on Kingsfold Drive, where we have rooms to let there, of which the council derives 50% of any income, and it's been near on impossible to let them. Now that is a building with a car park and with security, whereas we're looking to let these rooms in the middle of a park, and the planning application points out that it's completely surrounded by trees and not visible to any other properties, and there isn't a car park. So where is the interest coming from for this to be a conservative estimate of revenue?
We've had initial discussions with some local social enterprises who have shown some initial interest. Obviously, there's more work to be done on that, but the operations they're looking at are based around the park. So rather than a sort of a commercial, I say we're looking at charities, social enterprises, that side of things. The cafe or catering outlet being one of those, there's obviously two options there. The building is going to have a kitchen that can either act as a self-catering function for the building in use, or if it's attractive to a social enterprise or similar, potentially offering training to certain people, that can be then set up as a catering outlet, also serve the public.
Right, okay, thank you. Karen, I think your next question has probably been answered in fairness.
Yes, I agree. Yes, yeah, that's fine.
And I think also the question I was about to ask about the figure of 655 has also been answered. So we're quickly moving on now. And again, I don't think, Will, there's much point in asking your next question either, because it's yet again back down to who signed all this off. So, Colin, perhaps I bring you back in at this stage. Colin, Councillor Colin Coulton.
Councillor
Thank you. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you. Page 7 of the report, paragraphs 14 and 16. Both these paragraphs refer to the tender process and state that a reduction in cost cannot be guaranteed, and an increase in cost can be met by underspends elsewhere. Is there any limit at all to what the total cost of the project might be? And is this how the project is usually run, on a financial basis like this? The whole thing seems to be a little bit flexible, to my mind.
Well, I think I did answer. I think I did answer a question before, where I said that there is a contingency within the overall figure of 783,000, and I also said is that given what the discussions that we've had, there's obviously got to be a control over the spend. I mean, the idea would be, I mean, you know, again, I did refer to it. You don't know what the situation is post-COVID, but I think, you know, having had the discussion that we've had here in Scrutiny, and also, you know, prior to sort of coming into it, because of the increase in costs against that background, is that we've got to ensure that it doesn't, that the costs do not exceed what is stated in the bid. And indeed, the hope and what we will be working to is for it to be considerably less than that.
So when you say we've to ensure that we won't exceed, so if it does exceed, what will we do? Will we have to cut our cloth according to our pockets, as it were?
Well, I think what we would need to do is to ensure is that what we are doing in order to get the bill that is projected is to ensure that it is within those costs. I mean, I think you're asking the question. I mean, and I'm trying to sort of reassure Scrutiny is that it will have to be contained within those costs. And indeed, I mean, what we would be hoping for is that the cost to the council will be less than what is quoted within there, 253,000. I mean, that would be, what we would hope would happen. But I mean, again, within the 783,000 figure, there is a contingency within there. So it's not just a hope. I mean, it's one can't guarantee with these things, but certainly it will be a definite instruction that any costs to the council should not exceed that which will be approved by council when it goes before council.
Can I just ask you a supplementary? Is there any provision for energy conservation within? I know it's an old building, but as part of the refurbishment, will there be insulation and will there be any energy generation? Solar panels, or I know it would be difficult with. Well, I don't presume a listed building.
Well, all I can say is that as far as we are concerned as a council and as an administration, I mean, the green agenda and conservation of energy and the use, the usage of energy has to be a #1 priority. So that'll have to be, a vital part. I mean, I think it is a vital part of the bid when we presented it, that there would be that conservation.
The building will be heated by air source heat pump.
Chair, it's Gary Hall. Could I make a comment?
Yeah.
Chair, just listening to the debate and the questions, there are clearly quite a number of concerns amongst members on the panel and probably stakeholders that actually they may have not had the opportunity to either scrutinise or have the say in relation to the project that's now emerged. My suggestion would be, and this might be something you might recommend from Scrutiny, is that we now have a further consultation before it goes to council, so that all the issues that members are concerned about and maybe stakeholders are concerned about have the opportunity to input into that report before it gets debated at council.
Yeah. No.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. But that leads to the question: what is the timescale on actually accepting this lottery grant? Because if there is a cut-off point, the clock is clearly ticking.
Yeah, there's at this point, David, there's no cut-off, probably extended by the COVID challenge. So there's no deadline date at this moment in time.
Right, so we do have time on our side to perhaps seek some further answers to questions.
Yes, Chair.
In which case, we don't have many left, so could we just perhaps ask 2 or 3 more and then bring it to a conclusion? I think Councillor Adams, you had a question.
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 10 of the report, paragraph 35, what is the footfall through the park and how was this measured? And what is included in the park's annual events programme as well?
In terms of the footfall, I understand that there has been exercises carried out to gauge that, and I think the average is what, 130,000. 130,000 in terms of usage. I mean, that will include, obviously, I mean, if somebody takes the dog for a walk every day, I mean, that will be counted every day. But on the exercise that we've currently conducted, it's about 130,000. Okay.
I think I've been known and spoken to quite a few residents. I know that there's a particular issue about the park of an evening, of it going quite dark, 'cause obviously being surrounded by many trees. Is in that funding that we're talking about, the numbers, is the lighting of the potential paths in that?
Yeah, on the May Drive there is lighting. I mean, I think I've read it in the bid. There is some lighting there. Yeah, there will be. But I mean, just, you know, in view of what the chief executive has said, I mean, these are questions that, I mean, we can organise another consultation event for members where, you know, all those things can be gone through. I think, you know, within the tender bid and with everything that is needed to be presented in order to achieve the granting of the fund, all that will be included in it.
Thank you. I think a further consultation, sorry, Chair, would be appropriate. I think purely because of what we've of the historic kind of what sounds like the missed opportunities to consult with members and also the public as well, which I think is imperative. I think that seems to be the case of obviously what was highlighted in the governance report that has recently been announced, and I think it's something we need to look at closely moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Walton.
Yes, it's just a question about on the consultants' brief. There was an increase. It was to increase membership and volunteering. And has any additional members been found? And how many volunteers are in place to run the building? And if volunteers can't be found to run the building, what will happen then?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, these are the great imponderables, aren't they? I mean, I think as far as we're concerned, is that I think everybody has recognised is that one of the things that has come, one of the beneficial things that has come out of the COVID crisis is that we've seen a number of people coming forward and volunteering in a number of different guises. And we would always want to really, you know, capture those people who are willing and encourage people to come forward as volunteers. And that will be an ongoing theme across the borough, not just, you know, with regard to this. So, I mean, all I can say is that we would do our utmost to encourage that volunteers come forward and play their part within the community. And I think that will be an ongoing thing, whatever the project.
But would it mean that perhaps some of the things that were planned wouldn't be able to go ahead if there weren't volunteers to man the building or be there to whatever they're wanting to do, making tea or organise things?
Well, I mean, we can't cover every eventuality. I mean, we can't legislate for every eventuality. I mean, I suppose each instance has to depend on the current circumstances that exist at that time. I think it would be if there was an event arranged, then I would have hoped that there would be sufficient preparation that we would be able to cater for the visitors or the attendees at that event. So I mean, it would be, in my opinion, if we'd organised something like that, it would be tragic if we didn't have enough people to, you know, to staff it or to run it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, mate.
Karen, would you like to ask your question at this stage on the disabled parking?
Yes, I will do. Yes, it says on page 13 of the report, paragraph 57, the planning application states that closed blue badge disabled parking was requested, but officers noted that an increase in the park was not desirable. How does this lack of disabled parking meet our statutory equality duty? As there's no traffic in the park allowed at the moment.
Well, I mean, clearly we'd have to look at that. I mean, I noticed in the bid. I mean, I did sort of query that myself. Is that there isn't provisions for within the park itself for disabled parking, and certainly from an equality and diversity point of view, I think it is something that we would need to look at, so that, you know, people with disabilities or less able are not discriminated against. Yeah, I recognise that.
So that will be part of the future plans.
I think we have a duty to consider that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we're nearly there. Councillor Colin Sharples.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question about how the project would be managed. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I was going to ask how the project will be managed to ensure there are no further cost increases. I think we've discussed some of this, haven't we, already? I just think Scrutiny will need more detail so that on how it's going to be managed, so that if there are any changes in cost, that is flagged up early and decisions can be made. I just wondered how can it be managed? Can we say that now, or do we need more detail, or you need to come back to us?
Well, no, I mean, the project will be managed, and it will be managed by officers. And I think as far as the second part of your question is concerned, is that if there is any hikes in cost, or if there are difficulties encountered, or the situation develops that requires a particular decision to be made, then we would expect, in view of that, to come back to the member decision makers in order to make a decision. And depending on what that is, that would either, if the opportunity is there to be run past scrutiny, we would. But at the end of the day, I suppose once the decision has been made, is then it would be subject to being scrutinised, because the members would be accountable. And I think that's the theme that running through all the debate that we've had.
Yeah.
Is that there is a concern that the full transparency and accountability in terms of the decision making has not been as clear as what it should be. And I think that's what the chief executive alluded to. So yeah, there are issues. I think that this has been useful, but I mean, just emphasises that the decision-making process has not been completed. I mean, we're coming to scrutiny. It'll be council for doing that. We've already sort of accepted that there will be further consultation about the implications of the bid and the background to it. There has been a sort of a lack of transparency, I think, in terms of latterly on the decision making. But I don't personally. I don't want us to lose sight of the fact about the benefits of winning the funding from the lottery and from what we will get from it. Because I mean, there might be a disagreement, but I personally think that it will be a tremendous asset if the work goes ahead and it's completed.
Thank you.
So can I just ask if anybody is not muted, can you please do so? Because we seem to be picking up a lot of shuffling around of papers or whatever, although we are almost there. Two final questions from myself, one of which is really directed to the author of the report, because it refers to page 13, paragraph 55. Reference is made to negative publicity if members did not accept the lottery funding when there has been limited involvement through the project. Is this a fair and appropriate comment to make in a report?
Who is the author?
Sorry, that's myself. Which section is it? Sorry, what number?
It's page 13. It's paragraph 55. It's reference to negative publicity if members did not accept the lottery funding. There's been limited involvement from the members. So is this a fair and appropriate comment to make?
Yeah, I will review that comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And very finally, this is probably to Councillor Titherington. If you were to embark on another project such as this, what would you do differently?
After the last hour and a half, a lot differently. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, mindful of what has been said in the annual governance statements, mindful of what has been said today, taking cognizance of what's in the report and the history behind it, and the bid is clearly there is a genuine lessons to be learned, and there is a genuine and sincere belief on our part and my part and on the cabinet's report and the leaders' report part is that we want to be as transparent and as open as possible. I mean, I don't think it does anybody any good, the council any good, if we're not transparent, open and accountable. So, yeah, things will be a lot different. And I mean, I suppose in some respects, I would say accept some sort of responsibility for that, and perhaps not being as vigilant as what I should have been in terms of the costs. But yeah, it will be done differently.
Okay, many thanks. Before we move to recommendations then, could I invite the ward members, Councillor Harry Hancock and Councillor Angela Turner, would you like to ask any questions or make any contribution?
Yes, I'd like to say something, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, I really take what Gary has said. He's right. You know, we are where we are. And obviously, Councillor Titherington, as chairman, I think he's been put in an awkward position because he's not been involved in the history of this. So, you know, he's obviously the new cabinet member. I wasn't happy to find out by reading the Lancashire Evening Post that the Heritage Lottery Fund had been awarded. We've now established what that means, so I'll leave that there. The only one point I've got to make, if you don't mind, is the value that's mentioned all the way through, which is the £783,625. So the terminology around that is, at one stage it's an overall project cost, then it's a project value, then it's full cost, then it's a current cost, which was back in October 2019, bearing in mind 9 months ago, the last quote of 783,625. Obviously, as Councillor Titherington had mentioned, I would have thought COVID-19, if anything, there's a view it could increase the cost because of the extra training and social distancing from the guys on site. And also, I would have thought that would reduce the chances even more of hiring out office space because people are working from home. But that said, the most important thing for me is the tender process. The tender process does not mention anywhere the commercial pricing category of what the contractors should bid. So therefore, I don't know if that £783,625, which has been referred to as a cost means something different to me, I think, than it would to other people. I don't know if it's a cost, a budget, an estimate. I hope that the tender does ask the eventually down-selected contractor for a pricing category of whether he's giving us an estimate or a fixed non-revisable price based on even if the programme slips by 6 months. That, in other words, the financial liability of this council has to be protected, and we have to know whether or not that £783,625 gets any cost creep in it. And that can only be judged by the contractor's quote. And if the contractor's quote is a fixed non-revisable price against a programme with maybe the programme extending and a commitment from the contractor that they won't be coming back to this council to ask for further, I would call it non-recurring cost. But obviously, I think from what Gary said, we can review this now at another meeting. So I am totally for the renovation of this Hurst Grange Park, and so is my colleague Harry Hancock, absolutely. But we have to consider commercial implications to the council. we all would like all our assets doing up, and heritage assets particularly, but we have to take into consideration the commercial aspect of this, and the potential financial vulnerability that the council could be put in. That's my question statement.
Yeah.
I think at this point you say, would the cabinet member agree with me?
Would the cabinet member agree with me?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think we. Yeah. I mean, obviously we've got limited resources, and those resources have got to be protected. And in terms of the tender, I think that those things have got to be taken into account when considering who to award it to, as indeed the social value costs have got to be taken into account. So, yeah.
Chair, could I just make a point on this as well? I think, we've all got to recognise that the world's a different place than it was a few months ago. So context is really important, and part of the debate at council will be about the council resources and its commitment to this type of scheme. It's something we are going to have to review in the light of what's happened during the COVID pandemic and the financial impact that we understand the council may face moving forward. So the context for the decision has also changed. I think that's a really important point that members need to understand.
Okay,
Can I just come in, Chair? Can I come in now?
Your Worship, please do.
Thank you, Chair. Most of my questions have already been answered, so I'm not going to go over them again. I've just got a couple that I'd like to ask. First of all, according to the Heritage Fund application, it also states 172 people will be trained as part of the project. Could you tell me trained for what and by whom?
Yeah, please, Greg.
This comes from the activity plan again, that looks at training for staff and volunteers in various things. It can range from food hygiene for volunteers, first aid training. Obviously, being a heritage bid, there's an element of heritage building conservation built in, heritage skills side of things, and that comes from the activity plan that has a range of sort of different training needs, and so that amount has been drawn across from there.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question. As a councillor for the Broad Oak Walk, it is desirable to see the restoration of the Coach House building in Hurst Grange Park, providing it stays within budget. Unfortunately, this project has seen a constant increase in costs, which has almost doubled since July 2018, and the estimate cost to the council has already been said has increased by over 1,000%. Should this application for approval be refused when it is put before full council, is there a plan B?
Well, I don't think there's a plan B in terms of the coach house. I mean, as I see it, if it is rejected by council, then we would have to review it all about what we were going to do with the coach house and others. I mean, I think the chief executive just referred to is that if it is rejected, then we would have to consider in the round what we would spend, what resources that we've got on particular issues. I don't think I can go on. Sorry.
As such, then there is no plan B.
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members or officers who are participating who would like to contribute or ask any questions?
Chair, I would quite like to just say a quick word if I may.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to say it as it is how, I'm going to commend Councillor Titherington for coming in front of the Scrutiny Committee and taking and attempting to answer the questions in the way he has for what has been a challenging hour and a half. It's fair to say that the Cabinet has spent a number of months now trying to work through this. Mick's championing this project because he has a huge desire and is right that the community shouldn't be impacted by process not necessarily being followed at South Ribble Borough Council, and I wholly support him for that and thank him for that, and as does the community. However, this project is reflective of, in my view, on how not to do things, and it's also reflective on the annual governance statement that the members of the Scrutiny Committee, in fact members of the entire council, will have read the last 2 or 3 weeks. You know, I am exceptionally disappointed that the historic practice of capital approvals being within Green Links programmes for projects like this are deemed as formal approval for a project, because clearly they're not. And that practice has ceased. It ceased months and months and months ago. There has to be absolute transparency. Clearly, you'll need to look at the Word and Hole project, Chair, and compare how that's been delivered to this project. And it grates me hugely that because of the way that this project has been delivered over the last few years and historically, that it's now put that project potentially at risk. Because if it had been done properly from day one, it quite possibly would actually be in build now. And that's what frustrates me. But it doesn't frustrate me as much as the historic practices that have gone on within South Ribble. You know, and the officers are clearly aware that things must change and must be done differently. Hence why you're aware I asked for this paper to come in front of you today, and I asked Mick obviously to come and sit in front of it, do his best to answer the challenging questions you would have, and hence why it's also now got to go to council for approval, because there hasn't been the transparency there and costs have escalated. My biggest number one frustration with this is as I say, this historic practice of sums being sat within appendices of capital programmes being deemed as approval for schemes when clearly it's not. And so for that, I apologise to the Scrutiny Committee and I apologise to the residents of Penwitham. But we'll do our damnedest to get through this and our damnedest to deliver the project. But we welcome your scrutiny. And as I say, I thank Mick once again for standing up in front of the Scrutiny Committee on behalf of the Cabinet today in attempts to deal with this legacy issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps we can now draw this to a conclusion. But before I do, could I first of all commend the Friends of Hurst Grange Park and the Friends of the Coach House Restoration Project, some of whom I have to say I've known for over 25 years now, and I know the commitment and the enthusiasm that they've put in. I would also like to thank Greg Clark for coming along today and answering some very difficult questions. I'd like to thank him for all the work that he has put into this project, because I know he's shown great dedication, and I wouldn't like him to think that after the grilling he's had, he's not recognised as a very valued member of staff, because he is. And I would also like to thank Councillor Titherington for trying to bat away all the questions that we've put, having taken over this portfolio just over a year ago and having inherited this as one of the legacy issues. So that having been said, I would now like to propose some recommendations from the committee, and I would ask the members of the panel, once I've been through these, to give their approval. One, that the council reviews its scheme of delegation to members and officers to clarify roles and responsibilities for decision making, including documenting decisions and ensuring they are open and transparent. Two, that a review of the process for bidding for and accepting external funding takes place to ensure that approvals are in place and risks are effectively managed. Three, the project management framework is reviewed with a view to strengthening project approvals, monitoring and dealing with any deviations. Four, future reports agreeing the capital programme provide greater detail of each project to enable members to make informed decisions. Five, members are briefed and engaged in key projects and activities taking place in their ward and local area. 6, greater links are established between the new My Neighbourhood Forum model and key projects as part of the council's commitment to putting communities at the heart of everything we do. 7, we would urge officers to revisit the project with a review to achieving economies and make it more affordable while still restoring the coach house structure. And finally, any items committing the council to significant costs or expenditure be approved by Cabinet or Council as appropriate in the future. Could I ask members of the panel if they are in agreement with those recommendations?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, yes, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous. So if I could thank everybody who's taken part today. It has been a very difficult meeting. If I could thank those who've watched patiently on our YouTube channel. And with that, if I could close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.